Recording in progress.
Well, good morning, Mr. Dalton. I found you. You are
Good
co-hosted.
Good morning. I'm seeing you on Facebook pretty fine, so that
Good.
connection made.
Is the sound good there too?
Um,
1, 2, 3,
Hang on
4.
just a second. I'm going to mute myself on Zoom.
All right. I think it should be fine. It's looking good from the bouncing bar here. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's okay, Jim. We can. Are you there now?
Yeah, I had to wait 30 seconds for something to happen.
Oh, right. 1, 2, 3. Does it sound okay?
Yes, it's great.
Okay. Well, welcome to about this Mac OS Monterey. I feel so modern. I did make a very interesting, useful discovery yesterday. I was sending an email, and I wanted to include something, an attachment. And I noticed it said include attachment from iPhone. And I took a picture with my iPhone, and it instantly appeared in my email. Now that's going to be handy for sending things. So that's the techie update for we're at the second, January 2nd, 2022. 2022. What a strange thing. Who knew? Who knew? There was a time when I thought it was all going to end in 1984. So, a poem. Maybe a nice reading from the great saint of the 20th century, Mr. Rogers. You know, I say that humorously, but he's a man who was so devoted to children that he created freedom for them to. Well, after 9/11, he talked about death, and nobody else was talking about death around children. And he did it in such a beautiful way. So here is Mr. Rogers on perfectionism. I know how important it is to give up our expectations of perfection in any arena of our lives. I know I've tried hard to do this, and yet I know that every once in a while the old pattern emerges. Quote, maybe if I could make at least one proper segment of the program. Close quotes. And I find myself in that trap again. That doesn't mean that we can't produce highly satisfying moments for ourselves and others. But it is important to give up, maybe daily, trying to be perfect. Of course, I think we want it so strongly because we reason that if we are perfect, if we do a perfect job, we will be perfectly lovable. What a heavy burden. Thank God we don't have to earn every bit of love that comes our way. I know how important it is to give up our expectations of perfection in any arena of our lives. I know I've tried hard to do this, and yet I know that every once in a while the old pattern emerges. Maybe if I could make at least one proper segment of the program, and I find myself in the trap again. That doesn't mean that we can't produce highly satisfying moments for ourselves and others, but it is important to give up, maybe daily, trying to be perfect. Of course, I think we want it so strongly because we reason that if we are perfect, if we do a perfect job, we will be perfectly lovable. What a heavy burden. Thank God we don't have to earn every little bit of love that comes our way. Boy, I just heard that as I was reading it. It's a lot of tightness trying to be perfect, isn't it? I just noticed a text from Michael Shohan, the OED, don't know what that is, defines perfection as that which does not exist in reality. So let us sit, the Oxford English Dictionary. So let us sit in our reality exactly as we are. Life is here right now. And it is exactly as it is. We begin this, what we think of as a new year. In fact, it's this moment now, as it always is. It is traditional to remember to what's the word? To call into being a thought or two of gratitude. There's the simple things, obvious. To have awakened in a warm bed this morning. To not have a toothache, Thich Nhat Hanh says. For those of us with children to know that they're more or less safe at the moment. To those of us who care about anyone, to know that there's no crisis at the moment, or maybe there is a crisis. I imagine in a group of this size, there's always a crisis of some kind. Gratitude. Let's perhaps think back in our lives to some time when we met someone who was really kind to us. Maybe someone who opened our hearts to more love than we'd known before. Or I just remembered someone I haven't thought of in many, many years. I fell in the Sierra Nevada and cut my leg rather badly. I could still walk. I could still even carry a heavy pack, but I was in pretty bad shape. I went to a ranger station, and the ranger looked at my leg and said, "I'm coming out with you," and hiked out for, it was a whole day. He took me to the ER in Fresno. And the ER doctor fixed up my leg and then said, "You're coming home to my house tonight." And he and his wife, for reasons unknown, put me in their bed. And then the next day they took me to the bus station so I could go around the mountains and go back in to meet my friend. Fishbeck was their name. You have someone like that in your life. Probably several. Makes me sort of teary to remember them. And we can also call to mind our refuges in being awake. The refuge in the Buddha, in the teachings of the Buddha, the Dharma, and more fundamentally, refuge in things as they are, perfectly imperfect as they are. And I take refuge in the Sangha, the community of practice. Human beings have been passing these teachings down from one generation to the next since the Buddha, 140 to 160 generations. That's something, isn't it? But a lot of fidelity to the practice. And I guess there's one more piece of gratitude I want to mention, which is to each person here. Each person who made the effort this morning to come and be of support to each other. Here now. And so let us together invite awareness to awaken in this body. It is alive, isn't it? Awareness and the life of the hands meet, or more accurately, co-arise. I wonder if you can hear the crows here. They come spontaneously into being and then disappear. There's the life of the legs and the feet, the chest, the face. And there is breathing in and out. You don't have to breathe, do you? The body breathes by itself. And all and any of the descriptors are inaccurate. Perhaps there's some accuracy to each breath has a beginning. But does it really have a discrete moment of beginning, or is it something that emerges? It rises to fullness. It declines and it disappears. It's probable that thoughts think themselves. Even many years into practice, it's possible to still hold the belief that the goal is to get rid of those pesky thoughts. Sometimes they go away. Over time, concentration does develop. And yet, here they are. Thoughts of the past, thoughts of a future. The five hindrances come up, a mind filled with wanting something, or disliking something, pushing against something. This should not exist. I don't like this. Or a mind which is restless and agitated and worried and unpleasant. Or a mind filled with sloth and torpor, fatigue, dullness. Or a mind with doubt, uncertainty, competing belief systems. Perfectly normal human mind. And in the midst of all of these, there's suddenly, with greater or less frequency, there's mindfulness. It's as though the lights come on. And it becomes obvious. This thought is not me. This mood is not me. It's the mind unfolding. And for stability, we have this old friend, the breath. And let us allow our bodies to take root here. Way back in my early practice, 50 years ago in Bodh Gaya, the teacher Goenkaji would say, let's take this next hour as a vow sitting. No moving. There was a lot of group pressure. But it's a very interesting and useful thing to... I know on my retreats when I remember, I make a local rule like in golf, and the local rule is no drinking during meditation. It's hard for some people. If I don't hydrate every 20 minutes, I'll dry up. No scratching, no moving, just parked. Now, of course, if there's real pain, we adjust after examining it closely. But it is a relief to give up the freedom of movement. And it sure makes restlessness obvious. So we come home to breathing. Aware of the body, observant of the mind. And how is it if we try to meditate perfectly, whatever that would be? I suppose it would be some kind of transcendent cosmic state. There'd be no discomfort. We'd be floating in loving kindness and compassion in infinite amounts. There'd be no dukkha. But in real practice, maybe there's fear. Maybe there's sleepy dullness and a consciousness that won't quite wake up. Maybe there's fantasies of a future, or fear from a fantasy of a future. Perhaps the mind is very expansive right now, or very contracted. Perhaps it's obsessed with something. Or maybe it's just quiet. How is your mind right now? We can practice in a way that's leaning forward and aggressive, or slumped back and unconscious somehow. Or we can be right here in the arms of mindfulness and love. And be curious about the emergence of each breath. There is an elegant, simple teaching from Ajahn Chah. Whenever you want to bring your mind or your practice into perfect balance, remember these simple words. It's like this. This moment is like this. And what if we were to abandon the self-improvement project? Even for just a little while. Where we would simply say, I love you, with your own name at the end. Feeling your way into the body, being the body. We internalized early on, even pre-verbally, attitudes of something wrong with us. What if that's never been true? There were things we needed to work with, but are we really broken or somehow unworthy of love? And so we could work at it, I'm going to love myself, or we could just drop into the present moment. I love you with your name at the end. And as we rest in loving of ourselves, of course, it becomes possible to love the people near us, to acknowledge their imperfection, whatever that is. And of course, there's always the great reminder thinking about someone in your past who's gone, one way or another. You have no idea where they are. And then thinking of our most dear ones and knowing they too will be gone. Remembering this, how can we be anything but loving? And this too, we don't need to try to do perfectly. It's just softening into the heart and doing our best. I invite you now to please become aware of where the body touches the cushion or the chair. Notice the aliveness in what we call the hands. And in the face. I'm not trying to make something happen. It's just life there, here. And notice the aliveness in the eyes. And then it's through intention that things happen. And please notice really closely, how is it to form the intention to open the eyes? Is it a thought? Is it a vision? What is it? Curiosity, the second factor of enlightenment. And now making the effort to open the eyes, there's a sort of willing, and then it takes some effort to mobilize the eyelids, and then there's the first beginnings of blurriness and light. Seeing. What is seeing? Strange. Seeing. And in this instance, and I guess I should also acknowledge the conditioned nature of seeing. Your experience of seeing might not be clear. It might be just, well, it might not exist. Or it might be blurry, or it might be patches of light, or it might be corrected like mine with fancy glass lenses, and it might actually be clear enough to read these names even. And then to see. To see some people who are very familiar to you, perhaps. Maybe you know them well. Or maybe there's someone here you've never seen before. Seeing. And then we could bring with us the love that we were feeling toward ourselves, and seeing. I see a response in this mind. It's like, oh, there's that person. Hi. Hi, Allison. Hi, Kimberly. Hi, Vic. Hi. It's like, oh, you're all here. How nice. I can't hug you, but I can sure notice you. And you have your impact on me. There's Gary. Gary with Alexis for a while there. Gary and I got to lead Gary's one of the PIMC teachers. We got to lead a New Year's Eve gathering that was really quite lovely. We brought the year in appropriately. Well, I have something I want to show you. And then a couple of announcements. But this is, I show you this with some pride and delight and maybe some relief coming soon. This is what the PIMC Dharma Hall looks like now. Well, actually not. There's the new doors are in, but this is what it's looked like for some months, dormant. And this was when they were demolishing the old restrooms. And here, I gotta. And this is a detail that this is a new board. This is a new board. This is an old joist. These were sitting on top of the foundation with 1 inch of them on the foundation. And if the building had shaken like in an earthquake, all the joists would have fallen off the foundation and fallen in. No more, because they're held in with these new boards that are fastened to the joists and this fancy piece of hardware here. And this you'll see a picture of in a few moments. This is the beginning, not the beginning, but part way into the ramp building. This ramp has foundations. It is solid. This is a glue lamb. It's a board glued together. It was necessary to span a gap here. And we didn't know it at the beginning of the project. It turned out this was I think it was an $8,000 ad to put the glue lamb in. But it's stable. It's holding up the choir loft. And I think this line here, that's a laser line they were using. So here's moving along on the foundations, the footings for the ramp. What an amazing group of people. I really admire these people that worked on this. You can see it a little further along. And here it is at completion. That's the back door entrance. There's going to be a new door here with lots of glass. That's back on back order, part of a supply chain issue. And this is we'll see a lot more of this in the future. These are the walls of one of the restrooms, the ADA restrooms. The walls of PIMC are built out of piled bricks. It was built in 1930, and there's nothing supporting it up and down. In a bad earthquake, it would crumble. So what will happen, this happened in the restrooms, and it'll happen around the whole perimeter of the Dharma Hall. These 2x8s will go in every 16 inches. And then this is a fancy thing. It's put in by a power driver sort of thing. It sticks into the bricks. It screws into the bricks. And then every 16 inches up and down, this goes on and will fasten the bricks to the 2x8s. The 2x8s are connected to the floor and the ceiling, up at the joists, up at the trusses. And the trusses will be connected to the new roof with this kind of thing too. These are the bolts that hold the thing together. Quite remarkable technology. They have a great machine. They drive these things. They drill a hole in the concrete and then they blast these things in a spiral fashion. Here's nearing the end of the project. This is the entrance from Duke Street for people with legs, people who can walk. Here's the new. This is all. It's really out of proportion, but there are now two beautiful Americans with Disability Act. What do you call it? Accessible restrooms. This was along the project. This is the new door, and the ramp comes up to here. This is the view into the Dharma Hall. One night I was there late, and then it became this. Here's those stairs again. Yes, this is a father-son team putting in this window. This father, his grandfather taught him to do glass, and he's teaching his son. And he, the workman here, craftsman actually, he was looking at the ramp and waxing poetic, as did several other people. And he said, "You don't?" Makes me teary. You don't see construction like this anymore. People don't build this well. And he showed me the things that make this ramp really extraordinary. And so I'm grateful to PNC Construction and to the people who were working on it. They did I won't go into the details, but it's quite a remarkable thing. Here's the new gate. You leave this gate that's Duke Street beyond, and it's got a crash bar so someone in a wheelchair can easily use it. And here's the ramps. This surface here was a little bit of an extravagance we did. I don't know that it's an extravagance, but you see, here's a window. This is Gregory Malouf's office. And there's other offices along here. And so these let a little bit of light through, and they're totally skid resistant. And here we see it at night. And I think that's the last picture. It is. So there, that's a fruition of a long time coming. And we set off now into I signed a contract with the city that we would complete the project, making the building significantly seismically sound, within 7 years. So we're approaching foundations and approaching fundraising in a variety of ways. And it's a big bill. We have to raise $800,000. But we did 580 already, so we'll do it. And the mission is of such importance, right? It's PIMC transforms lives. And the people who come to PIMC are transformed. And then they go home to their families and their friends and their work. And I know one of my students, I need to be obtuse a bit, but one of my students worked very closely with Hillary Clinton. And she was coming toe to toe with people that were really kind of hateful. And one of her things was to learn how to be loving toward them and not be reactive. And she pulled it off. She really got it together. She retired now, but she really, and it was because of PIMC she was able to do that. So announcement-wise, tonight at 6:30, Kendall Summers will be teaching. You can find the information for that on the website. She also has a once-a-month women's group, and we have our bevy of teachers, Jim Dalton on Monday nights, and Gregory occasionally on Wednesdays, and Doug Pullen. Doug Pullen, with what I like to say is, like the Sunday mornings, is monotonous regularity every Thursday night, and he has an introduction to meditation class coming up soon, and more. It's on the website at this point. And lastly, what night is it? It's Tuesday night, isn't it? The 4th, January 4th. I'm going to host a Zoom meeting where we will listen to Vanessa Redgrave reading an hour and 30 minutes of, help me somebody. Joan Didion, Joan Didion's book, The Year of Living, The Year of Magical Thinking. And I heard this One of my friends turned me onto it, and I listened to it, and it blew my mind. I can't guarantee it would be as moving for you, but it really got my attention. And it's the first person story of her sitting at her kitchen table and her husband passing away before her eyes. And then what happened to her, what her mind did, and how the amazing way she avoided the reality of that for a long time. So it may not be your cup of tea. My daughter Tara was I think playfully mocking me at Christmas dinner, but Dad's always talking about death. So it is a kind of penchant for me. So, that said, Mr. Dalton, have you the moving capacity still in 2022 to lead us in some movement?
Still alive, breathing, and soon to be upright on my feet. I invite you to join me. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Is he loud enough to everybody? Yeah? Okay, you got it.
Turn it up a little bit. I can turn it up a little, but that's pretty high. Okay, I will get rearranged here a little bit.
Actually, let me say one more thing, Jim, as you're getting ready. I'm going to give a talk about the precepts for starting out 2022 when Jim's done. Hi, Tanya.
All right, so let me pin myself here and check out the ceiling and the floor. I want a little bit more floor. All right, so we're standing aware of contact through the feet with the surface we're occupying right now. And there's life in the feet. We can change the sensations by just shifting. Shifting the weight feels like this. There's sensations in the bottoms of the feet. You might bring your attention to the ankle area on the outside of the ankle on either side. You might bring your attention to the knee on one side and then on the other. When it's engaged, when it's not. It feels like this in the area of the knee. Take a step forward. Rock back and pause. It feels like this to sink into one leg. Lift the toe on the forward leg. Sensations. Moving forward and pausing. Sensations in the feet. Rock back, pause. Forward, pause. It's like this to move back and forth. Breathing. It's a certain sense of balance, like this. Rocking back, there's a sense of balance like this. We can pause and breathe. Rock back, pause. Get centered again. Both feet parallel. Feels like this. Step to the other side and pause. Rock back. Feels like this. And then we sink. What can we release? Moving forward, pausing, breathing. Predominant sensations. Investigating, curious, rocking back, pausing, investigating. It's like this. In the foot, in the knee, in the hip. Shifting, pausing, breathing. Back to the center, feeling the balance, left and right, sinking. What can be released? Lifting one arm overhead, pressing, pausing. Investigating. What's the predominant sensation? Releasing feels like this. Pausing, breathing. Same arm, reaching up, stretching. Feels like this when we pause. Breathing, scanning the arm, wrist, elbow, shoulder, release, soft wrist. Balance, stillness feels like this. Life in the hands. Life in the feet. Breathing. Lifting the other arm. Slowly stretching. Pausing. Breathing. Scanning the arm. Attention centers on the wrist. Centers on the elbow. Shoulder. And then the whole arm releasing. Pausing. Sensations in the feet. Ankles, the outside of the ankle, the inside. Calf muscles on one side and the other. Breathing. Mood. Slow movement creates a mood that feels like this. Sinking and raising up the side and down the center feels like this. Breathing. Releasing down, 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 down. Soft shoulder. Life in the hands. Life in the feet. Breathing. Sinking, crossing the wrists and opening the wrists. Crossing and opening. Lifting. Sinking. Lifting, turning over, pressing out. Again. Mood. And once more, nice and slow. Predominant sensations here, and here, and here. Resting, breathing. Sinking, softening, releasing what's unnecessary. Breathe into any tightness. Curious. Breathing. Grateful for another chance to practice together. Bring our palms together. Feel the fingers touching, the palm touching. Tap. Pause. Bowing to the wisdom of the body, the support of the Sangha, appreciation for another chance to practice. Thank you very much. I won't see you probably next weekend, but or next Monday, we'll be doing a retreat on another channel. And then in 2 weeks, I'll be back. And we'll see you then. Thank you very much for joining me. Back to the gallery view. I can see all of the individual Zoomers.
Thank you, dear Jim. I realized I neglected a couple of announcements. One is, if you go to the website, portlandinsight.org, there's a place to sign up to volunteer. And I don't know how that's going. I haven't checked with Gregory or Avi, but it is to there that we will be turning to invite people. Well, we'll invite broadly here too, but when there's projects emerging in the preparation of PIMC to open, we'll be turning to that. And then there's the invitation to offer the opportunity for your loving financial support of PIMC. We're setting into a new year. We have that big number for the remodel, but we also have our operating process, our operating expenses. And the best way to contribute to that is with a monthly contribution, because it contributes when you're not there. And we don't have the final numbers for the year last year, but we really did quite all right. We're holding our own, and we were solvent. I guess that's the thing. And it really depends upon our members, our participants, you, us. And so I invite you to think about that. Think about how important it is to you. And it's all through the website. Okay, I'm going to have one more drink of my Meyer lemon tea. Oh, Jim put a link to the volunteering. And something I haven't thought to say for some time. I mostly don't notice the chat. I don't even aspire to track the chat. And something happened about a year ago where someone said some things to me in the chat and then presumed that I had seen them, and then was very hurt that I hadn't responded. Please don't do that. It won't work. If there's something important you need to say to me, and if it can be public, then just say it in the open times in the session. But if it's private, send me an email. Robert@robertbeatty.com. So, I'm going to mute you, Jim. Your typing comes through pretty loud. I've been teaching for a long time. Remember, before giving a talk on something, I would listen to a talk by Jack Cornfield on the topic. And I had a little tape recorder with a foot pedal, and I could stop it. And so I would take notes. And over time, the topics have become second nature. I just remembered a favorite story from Ajahn Sumedho, one of my heroes in the Buddhist world. early on in his time at Wat Pananachat, or at Wat Bapong, with Ajahn Chah, Ajahn Chah told him that he wanted to give a talk. He wanted Samedo to give a talk. So he's speaking Thai, Samedo, and he worked on it. He really got it clean, like prepared, a good professional talk. And he gave that talk, and then Ajahn Chah said, "Give another." And then give another. And he had him do that until he became completely unable to talk. And this is in front of a large crowd of people. So he had no more to say. He didn't have his prepared talk. And afterwards, when he went to Ajahn Chah said, don't let me ever see you do that again. Your talk must come from your heart. And I'm aware of the difference in myself. There's the talk that is really clean and polished, and all the data is in lists. And I don't mean to say that one can't do that kind of talk very much from the heart. Joseph Goldstein is a perfect example of someone who has the complexities of the teachings at his fingertips, and then when he gives talks, he just doesn't miss a piece. But I am making the intention. I've been doing this for a long time, but I'm making the intention this morning beginning, that I really want to listen to it myself. And this is a perfect topic for that, because I'm looking over it. A visual I'll show you in a minute. Thinking of perfection and imperfection. And the precepts. In the Theravadan Buddhist world, lay people generally follow 5 precepts. Sometimes we take on 8, and I'll try to remember the other 3 before I'm finished. But as I've gone through life, I've become more and more respectful of the fact that we are mammals, we are animals, we have very primitive drives. And as Freud put it so beautiful, so aptly, we tend to feel superior to and dump Freud, but what a pioneer of his time. And one of the things he said notably was, the veneer of civilization is very thin. All you have to do is threaten the toilet paper supply, and people hoard. Threaten the food supply, and people get shot. So the purpose of the precepts, and they came along 2,600 years ago. These were created, and he didn't make them up. They weren't even new in his time. The Upanishads, 2,000 years before the Buddha, had the equivalent of these, and of course Christianity has the 10 Commandments, and it's the place where spiritual training intersects with our primitive nature, and where we can really use some guidance. And so, in as measured a way as I can, remembering to breathe even, I want to talk about the 5 precepts. And they're not commandments. We teach them to our children as rules, And we practice them as rules until we realize that they're not rules, they're laws. And they're not laws as in something passed by Congress. They're laws as in the laws of the universe, like gravity, like force equals mass times acceleration, or E equals mc squared. They're just the structure of the universe. And if we want to be happy, then we adhere to the precepts. And as we go through our lives and we are practicing happiness, we're practicing connection with others and respect for others, then the precepts themselves become not irrelevant, but they become useful consciousness devices, because when we're hurting, when a mess arises in our lives, we can look at it and say, so which of the precepts did I not follow here? So I'm going to share my screen. And one more thing I want to say. The precepts are not about sin. I don't know how many of you had Catholic childhood, but there was a big deal made about sinning. And if we sinned, then at the end of our lives, when we died and we went before God for judgment, we would go up or down on the basis of our sin. These aren't like that. These are kind of loving guideposts. Go this way. Go this way. I'll share a little story here. A few years ago, probably 15 years ago, I was doing some very deep therapy just around trauma in my life. And I was working on something else, and all of a sudden I found myself just sobbing. And there were these memories that came flooding through. And my first communion experience was very traumatic, because I was 5 years old, and I'd been convinced that there was hell, and that you shouldn't lie. And then First Communion came along, and they were teaching me that this little wafer was the body and blood of Jesus Christ. No mention of metaphor, but that I was supposed to experience it as that. And I didn't believe it. It didn't work. It didn't make sense to me. But I couldn't talk to the Christian brothers at the school. I couldn't talk to the nuns. I couldn't talk to my mother or my father. And so I was so tense. And I knew I was lying, but how could I not? And so I went up and I did this little ritual, getting my first communion, and then everyone was so happy afterwards, and I felt terrible, because I knew I was going to hell, because here at this important moment, I was completely in what's the word? I wasn't in alignment with myself. And all those years passed, and I was, 55 years old, and this tremendous sadness was there left over from that time. So, I guess one other thing, something that happens as we go deeper in our practice, again, a long time ago, I was on a retreat in India, and I had stolen a lunch. I went to university at that's funny, York University in Toronto. I did my master's in environmental studies in 1974. And I never stole anything. I was very, very, very diligent about not stealing in my life. My parents taught me that well. But there, I was coming through a tunnel, and the lunch carts were there. And I thought to myself, I've never stolen. I wonder what it would be like. And so I stole a salad. And I went and I ate my purloined salad, and that was kind of cool. And then all those years later, I don't know how many years later, it would have been 10 years later, I was on a retreat, and suddenly I felt so bad. And as I sat with that feeling bad, it was that damn salad. That there was a knot in my heart. They call it a problem with the uprightness of heart from that salad. And it turned out I went through Toronto a couple of years later, and I went and I paid for the salad, which was a relief. And of course, the manager thought I was completely out of my tree, but it was a relief. And there's been many other things like that have come up. It's like, oh, I did that. Ugh. There was one young woman in graduate school that I just was not nice to. I didn't know how to say I don't want to do this anymore, and so I did it badly. And I've never found her. I've tried a couple of times to see if I could find her and let her know that I wanted to make amends. So the precepts are very powerful, and they protect us, and they also help illuminate ourselves. So there's 5 of them, the traditional big 5, and they really cover the waterfront. So the first line here is the traditional precepts. And for years, and there's many translations, of course, one is, I undertake the rule of training to refrain from taking the life of any living being. And I actually just changed it this morning on this to one that I've come to love, which is, I undertake the training of the heart to refrain from taking the life of any living being. Hang on, I want to make this a little. Can I do this? That's good enough. So, let me just go through them all. And there's these second pieces, these aspirations, are implied in the precepts. But about 25 or 30 years ago, I wrote these articulated aspirations. I aspire to become kind and of service to all beings. Quite an antidote for this. I undertake the training of the heart to refrain from taking that. There we go. From taking that which is not freely given. It's a diabolical wording. And I aspire to become generous to all beings. I undertake the training of the heart to refrain from sexual acts which cause harm. I aspire to nurture love, relationship, and beauty. I undertake the training of the heart to refrain from false and harmful speech. I aspire to use speech to create happiness, connection, harmony, and understanding. I undertake the training of the heart to refrain from the use of intoxicants, and I aspire to cultivate mindfulness and wisdom. So coming back up here. I undertake the training of the heart to refrain from taking the life of any living being. I want to come back here. You know, there were more than 600 mass shootings in the United States last year. I think to qualify it has to be over 3. 600. And right now, right now in eastern Ukraine, there are people huddled in trenches. And in Yemen, there's a war going on, and the United States is the biggest exporter of weapons of all kinds, small arms included, in the world. This killing thing is really big, and our quote defense budget is astronomical. So there's a lot of killing in the world. Ajahn Sumedho said, in the talk he gave on this, What if we really keep this simple and just were to say, I will never kill another human being? You know, I gave this talk one time at Brighton Bush, and a fellow spoke up who had been in Iraq or Afghanistan. And he was a person of incredible integrity. And he spoke of the need for warriors to defend us. And he was right. I really corrected me, I think. What would I do if my family were in danger? And I probably wouldn't say, oh, it's fine. It's an interesting ethical question. But fortunately, most of us are not placed in that ethical dilemma very often. Thich Nhat Hanh expands this, that I will not allow others to kill. He formed in Vietnam the Order of Interbeing during the war, in which he and his colleagues refused to take a side, and they were killed by both sides. But they were a force for kindness and good and mercy. So this also can pertain, how do we relate to all living beings? And on my website you can find a little story called Killing Ratty, which is the story of my killing rats in my home. The moral and ethical decision I had, and finally, in the end, I wound up killing Ratty, but not only Ratty, but 6 more, because the house was infested. And at PIMC a few years ago, we had a terrible, persistent flea problem. We had to have the pros come in 3 times, as I recall. That's why we have a rule, no dogs at PIMC. My dog Budo gets to come. And if when people want to bring dogs, they have to have flea treatment from a vet. My wife's a veterinarian. Most of the stuff that comes over the counter now doesn't work, even though they claim it does. So anyway, we had this dilemma. What are we going to do? And we wound up hiring the pros. So there is this need sometimes, but then can we be sensitive to the need? What am I doing? I mean, even antibiotics are about killing. So how conscious can I be? And then the question often rises in this, which at this moment in this talk, which is, well, what about meat eating? And that's a really interesting question. What about that? Would I kill meat? Would I kill an animal to feed my family? Yes. What if I had lots of alternatives? And where the Buddha landed on it was that he told his monks, don't accept meat that was killed for you. But you could eat meat if it was what was available. And we get right into there's powerful feelings around this. And actually there's a PIMC, we have a policy, a written policy that came up that we created, which is that we don't take a stand on that. And I'm remembering one of the monks, one of the monks was in town, and someone asked him at this point, someone who was vegetarian or maybe vegan, was very aggressively questioning and pushing, and he said all the things that I just said, and then he said that what the Buddha taught, that what comes out of our mouths is much more important than what we put in. So interesting, I think. So the idea is to sensitize ourselves to how much we are involved with killing, how much we actively kill. And then the positive statement, I aspire to become kind and of service to all beings. It's an antidote, isn't it, of a sort. My purpose, my intention is to be kind. The Dalai Lama says again and again and again, my religion is kindness. He also said at a conference I was at that he visited, he said 4 or 5 times in 3 days, don't try to convert people to Buddhism. Don't make Buddhists out of them. Help them be better Buddhists, better Christians and Muslims, and so on. So I take this as a question to ourselves. What is my relationship to killing? How easily do I swat a mosquito, for instance? At least twice a year, some cute, handsome young person shows up at my front door. Hi, I'm with the Death Killer Squad, and you have spiders on your property. Would you like us to kill them? And if you say yes for a fee, they'll come and kill all the insects around your house. What? It's absurd. So, there's my opinion on that. Going on, I undertake the training of the heart to refrain from taking that which is not freely given. Show it here. Boom, boom, boom. This is a really interesting one. I undertake the training of the heart to refrain from taking that which is not freely given. That's, as I put before, it's a diabolical wording. And of course, the thou shalt not steal is the commandment. Are there any ways in your life where you cut corners? I just won't report this income because I don't need to, or and we can get very far into this, which is, do we take more from our bodies than they're freely giving? Do we take from our friends? Do we demand attention? And one gets more and more sensitized so that taking anything becomes more conscious. There's a story that always comes up when I talk about this. My doctor's office has really nice pens, and they've got their office name on it, right? And they're intended, there's a jar of them. They're intended to be given away. The purpose of them is to propagandize for that office. And I use them and lose them. And when I'm there and I need one, I always ask, is it okay if I take one of these? And it feels so good to me to do that. And then the positive statement, I aspire to become generous to all beings. When we are taking that which is not freely given, we can really observe, where does it come out of? It's because I don't have enough. My experience is I am in deficit, so therefore I need to help myself. As opposed to, I have enough. I can share. I have more than enough. So the practice of generosity is a kind of antidote to the practice of stealing. And then comes a really interesting one, I think. I undertake the training of the heart to refrain from sexual acts which cause harm. I undertake the training of the heart to refrain from sexual acts which cause harm. Positive statement. I aspire to nurture love, relationship, and beauty. I have, over my lifetime, wow, that was interesting. I just had a shooting pain down through this inside of my head. Ooh, weird. I have such a great respect for the there it is again, for the instinctual nature of human beings.
Robert, are you okay?
I'm okay. just telling you that something happened there. It'll probably never happen again. Thank you. If I fall over, call Jennifer. Thanks. I just remembered a line in a Tom Robbins book that water created humans in order to get itself into under overhangs and places it couldn't reach otherwise. And the prime directive, you know the saying, when beings meet each other, they have three questions. Do I have to fight it? Can I eat it? Or do I mate with it? And we can say, oh, that's silly. It's much more complex. Well, it is more complex, but there's also that. And I don't know about you, though I have a hunch. Have you ever gone insane about sexuality? Sometimes we call it falling in love or falling in lust. Let's have a show of hands. Have you ever done something really crazy that just made no sense except in the reproductive madness? Well, that's why the precept is there, because it's a way of putting a cognitive social barrier in. It's one of we wear rings and we signal to each other, because we can go crazy. We can become possessed. We call it passionate possession. Thich Nhat Hanh fluffs this one out some into, I won't be involved with anyone else who has other commitments. So we protect each other that way. Now, one could say that this would demonize the reality of sexuality, but I aspire to nurture love, relationship, and beauty. To use libido, this powerful force, to use it to bring love into the world, to actually make love, or to make art, or to use this energy to bring something beautiful into being. Is a very high aspiration. I'm remembering right now, there's a very beautiful little video made by somebody in Britain on consent. It's called A Cup of Tea. Let me show a show of hands. How many of you have seen that? Just a few, okay. Really worth going on YouTube and looking for it. It's I don't know if it's an allegory or what it is, but it's if someone comes to your house and they want a cup of tea, please if they say yes, give them a cup of tea. If they say no, don't force them to have a cup of tea. If they came over to have a cup of tea and they passed out, then don't force them a cup of tea on them. It's a beautiful allegory about consent and how important consent is. And in fact, good news here, my stepdaughter Nina, who's 21, when she went to U of O, each year she's gone to U of O, there's a 2-hour class in the first week of school that they must attend. If you don't attend, you can't register. And it's on consent. So, 11:50, need to move along. Let me say one more thing. We can injure ourselves badly by acting sexually when it's inappropriate for us, when it's the wrong thing. And it's even in committed relationships. Sometimes it's just the wrong thing, and we can violate ourselves or each other by demanding, and this is such a powerful force, it can force us to be quite blind. All right, the last two. I undertake the training of the heart to refrain from false and harmful speech. I undertake the training of the heart to refrain from false and harmful speech. And the positive statement of that, I aspire to use speech to create happiness, connection, harmony, and understanding. So there's a classic list, of course. Lying, slander, gossip, passing on information you don't know to be true, and the colorful one, idle chatter. I've been having it seems like a positive development, but it's been disappointing. Almost everything on the radio and television is idle chatter. Almost everything. And for the longest time, I used to drive with NPR on, and it was information, but it was also distraction. And I'm finding it's becoming more and more impossible to do that because the world is so interesting. I mean, when driving along and being present and watching how the world comes in and goes into me. And I can't do that if there's chatter going on in the background. So anyway, lying. There's a great little article written by Sam Harris called Lying. I should make a note to myself. How will I do that? I'll put a link to that on my blog. Lying. It's not long. You can read it in an hour, and I can truthfully say that it changed my life. The little white lie stuff. It's very interesting to really move more and more toward being impeccable in speech. Slander. Oh boy. Look at what's happening with our politics. Lying and slander. It's utterly sick. It's pathological to the max. And our children are watching, right? Modeling themselves on this. Lying, slander, gossip. There's a big one. Joseph Goldstein suggested that if you want to learn what gossip is, don't do it for a week. Don't talk about anybody who's not present. And a lot of silence ensues. And I've talked to, of course, many, many people over the years. Some people who work in offices where where there's a lot of gossip all the time, and to stop gossiping, there's tremendous social pressure. What's wrong with you? You're not participating, and so it's very challenging. But what a relief to not. And one more thing that I like to say about gossip is, if I'm here and I'm talking with you about him, her, them, and I can do that, and we can do that, parents do that about their children, so focused on the children, then the children leave home and the parents don't have a relationship, and they wind up separating because they haven't maintained their relationship. And so whenever I'm talking about someone else with you, I'm not saying, hey, how are you? What's happening between us? And then the idle chatter thing. The Buddha said, speak when what you're going to say is, when it has a purpose, when it's true, when you can say it gently, kindly, it's rooted in kindness, and when it's the right time. And it's interesting I know my speech has changed a lot over the years, and being sometimes around people who simply cannot stop talking. And it's remarkable to watch. And why are they doing that? Well, there's tremendous anxiety or something going on. So we can be aware of that in ourselves. And positive speech, I highly recommend Marshall Rosenberg, Compassionate Communication. what's it called? NVC, Nonviolent Communication. There's great stuff online and great book. Marshall Rosenberg would be strongly approved of by the Buddha, I'm sure. And finally, last but not least, I undertake the training of the heart to refrain from the use of intoxicants. And I aspire to cultivate mindfulness and wisdom. What could that possibly mean? Well, many of us have come through addiction to come to the Dharma. And of course it means destructive substances, but there's these. These are powerful intoxicants. And I've watched my kids, not so much my kids, but my stepkids, growing up with phones. And one of the shocking moments, which isn't really shocking anymore, but on her 12th birthday, my stepdaughter Nina had 12 friends over, or 11 friends over, so it was 12 persons. And at midnight or so, most of the evening, every single one of them was on their phone with someone else. So they're at a party where they're there, and they're all connecting elsewhere, and they're sending videos of each other, and I watch young people. They cannot not have their phone. It's really difficult. Well, and when I go on retreat myself and put away my phone, I miss it. What about the news? So I invite us to investigate, what do we do that is intoxicating? And if you're a regular substance user, alcohol, marijuana, other things, what does it do? Why do you do it? I know way back when I quit marijuana, I discovered I was depressed. And I was using it to suppress depression. Now there's another slant here, which is, well, what about psilocybin, and what about LSD, and what about medicinal use of various things? And so then we can ask ourselves, well, there's a long history of human beings using substances to heal and to access greater consciousness. So this isn't a rule to never, but the thing that I ask myself is there something that I'm doing regularly which is more about avoidance than about encounter with reality? And it's really a deep one for many of us. As I always say when I talk about this, I find it very interesting that the grocery stores I go to here in Oregon have at least 2 and sometimes 3 rows of very expensive shelf space devoted to wine. It's huge. And the number of pot shops here in Portland I presumed at first, well, they'll disappear. They won't be able to support themselves, but they're still here, and there's new ones. As I've counted, there's 6 on my main route over to PIMC and back. There's 6 pot shops. It's interesting. So that's the precepts. I will post them to my blog, robertbeatty.com blog. And I want to just swing back. It's 12 o'clock. I want to circle back to perfection. These are not about perfection. You can go along and you find that you've lied to somebody. It's like, wow, where did that come from? And you can examine, I see how that happened in myself. And it doesn't mean, if we don't follow the precepts perfectly, guilt is of no help at all. It's distracting. rather than, oh, right, how interesting, I did that. And finally, being aware of the precepts and the ways that I fail in being, quote, perfect with them helps with compassion for others who are struggling. So there, I wanted to leave time for group sharing, but I didn't. So, imperfect. So thank you for listening. I hope this is helpful. Lovely to see you. Strengthening. I woke up this morning with some kind of inchoate anxiety. I didn't no particular content to it, and I began the broadcast with that, and it's gone. So that's lovely. I prefer not to be in anxiety. So, just a heads up, Jim and I will be leading a 5-day retreat starting next Friday. I will not be here next Sunday. I don't know who will be. And then Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of next week, both Jim and I will be gone, and one of the other teachers will be conducting the gatherings, and I will be scheduling another stay-at-home retreat, probably a couple of months after we do this one, see how it works, and then we'll do it again.
Hi, Robert. I have a really quick question about the year of magical thinking.
Yes.
If I may ask. Is this the recording of Vanessa Redgrave's play, or is she reading from the book?
I think it's her play.
Okay, that's it. Thank
Yeah. Yeah, because it's an hour and a half, and the book is a 6-hour book reading. Yep. Well, thanks for being here. I hope you have a lovely day, and may this be a year of great awakening for all of us. So let us sing our way out. Bhavatu Sabe Mangalam. May all beings receive all blessings, and sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Bhavatu Sabe Mangalam. Bhavatu Sabe Mangalam. Bhavatu Sabe Mangalam. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu.
Goodbye, dear friends. May you have a lovely day. I'm going with Jennifer to visit her mom.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Nice to see you all. Thank you.
We got the whole world in our hands.
Happy trails to you until we meet again. All right. Preparing for the leap to hyperspace.
Preparing.
Are you buckled in?
Yes, sir.
Goodbye, Tamara. Goodbye, David. Goodbye, dear friends on Facebook and YouTube. For some reason, the picture is frozen. I don't know what did that.